Hi, I'm Mostdog, and I'm making a new video game called Flipstream. If you haven't seen my first devlog, go check that out. I had a lot of fun starting this project from scratch. This devlog is going to be mostly focused on obstacle generation. In order to hopefully make my life a little bit easier in the future when I start implementing various types of obstacles, I created this obstacle class with some of the attributes every obstacle will use. Object-oriented programming is a bit unintuitive in GDScript, so rather than making it an actual interface, I'm basically using the obstacle class as a template for other obstacle objects. So the obstacle class contains things like the type and placement as enumerators, and this constructor is basically used to set attributes on the actual node I add to the scene. Now for actually generating the obstacles. The basic idea for obstacle generation is that I want obstacles to spawn off screen at random intervals with random offsets. I had a couple ideas I wanted to experiment with to accomplish this. First was the total chaos approach. An obstacle can generate on the floor, ceiling, or one of two positions on the wall. And with this approach, I set up individual timers for each of the 4 possible obstacle placements and let them generate on random intervals. This was just to get a baseline feel for it, and as I expected, it was crazy. Way too many obstacles, and I couldn't really control which obstacles would generate at the same time, creating impossible obstacles. My second approach was more controlled. I set up a single timer that would fire at a random interval, and when it fired, I would generate a couple obstacles spaced out over a random distance. This was nice because it let me set up some basic logic to prevent impossible obstacles. For instance, I want one of the obstacle types in the future to be a large pit that's too long for the player to jump over, so the player must flip gravity to the other side. But if I do that, I can't put a pit on the other side too, or it would be literally impossible to cross. So I set up basic controls such as preventing obstacles from simultaneously generating on the ceiling and floor, but I think that's going to take some serious fine-tuning over time as I create new obstacle types and playtest the game. I'm sure I'll find new impossible obstacles that I need to address. I made an interesting improvement to this system where I made it possible to, at any given time, spawn up to 3 obstacles, but I didn't want it to be an equal distribution. So I created this weights dictionary and generated a random number between 1 and 100, and I used that weight association to determine how many obstacles to generate at once within that random offset range I set earlier. So at this point, the state of obstacle generation is somewhat solid, but I wouldn't be surprised if I totally overhaul this system later on when I've got more obstacles to play with and once I actually have artwork to make it feel like a real game. The last thing I did since the last devlog was a bug fix with the jump mechanic. My game had a weird bug where whenever I was on the ceiling, the jump mechanic was super unreliable. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. With the help of some debug statements, I found that every other frame, the player was not registering as being on the ceiling. The reason for this became evident when I looked back at my gravity function. Basically, I wanted the game to only update the player's Y velocity while in the air. The original reason for this was so that I could set a max fall velocity, but that was the wrong way to do it. I should have just added a clamp function after updating the player's velocity to never go beyond a certain point. So the cause of this bug was that whenever the player was on the ceiling, it would start falling, and then as soon as it was no longer on the ceiling, the gravity function would kick in and pull it back up to the ceiling over and over again. So I changed that to just create a gravity direction multiplier, and I also got rid of the max fall velocity functionality because I thought it felt better without it. So that's the progress I've made so far. This is really starting to feel like a game. I'm still feeling excited and optimistic for the next steps. I think in my next devlog I'll be adding some stuff like a game loop and a hit detector on the obstacles, and I'll also need to start making some more obstacle types. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one.